Kriga Bundalo. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to the library. I'm coming to you from here today because, well, I need to correct an error. I keep doing these error videos because, well, I keep making mistakes. Because I'm old. These things happen, okay? So let's just move past this and recognize we're all working towards a solution. That was me moving past it, by the way, in case you were curious what that was. Today we're coming back and we are continuing Battle Royale number 8. Yeah, an oldie. We are going all the way back to do a review and an addition to the People of the Black Circle. Now, this is a really complex Robert E. Howard story. In fact, in the original video, it was so complex, I didn't even give you guys a synopsis of it because I said, it's impossible. Well, I got a little more chops on me now. Well, I'm older. We're going to try it. We're going to go from scratch. So, we're going to do this one like an old school Battle Royale. Part 1, we're going to walk through People of the Black Circle in some broad brushstrokes and say, here's what happened in the story. Part 2, we are going to look at the winner of the original Battle Royale number 8, which was Savage Sword of Conan, and go through that page by page. What happened in there? Finally, we're going to come back and we'll compare it to the Dark Horse adaptation of this one, which is a 4-part series. Then, well, it's the billion-dollar question time. Which one's better? So without any further ado, let's turn the camera around. Well, actually, no, we're not turning the camera around. We're actually going to keep it here because I need these. All right, let's get into the Robert E. Howard story. All right, I've just taken a sip of coffee to wet my whistle. Had to make sure we're in the talking form because, you know, we're going to be talking now. It's the Robert E. Howard chapter of this video. This is what we do here. We talk through what happened in the Robert E. Howard story. Now, I actually went back and rewatched my original Battle Royale number 8 in preparation of shooting this video. A variety of things came to mind. Most of them being highly self-critical. And I probably should stop that. I should really just accept the person that I am and move forward. I should do that more in my life. I think all of us should. Not the point here. Old man ramble. See how we go down these videos? We need to try to stay on target here, guys. Let's stay on target. So, what happened in the story? Well, this is one that had a lot of moving parts, which is why in the original Battle Royale, I actually steered clear of going through actually the details of the story. Because, well, there was too much to it. Well, I've got Post-it notes. You can't see it because they're in front of me and they're under the camera. But we're going to put them up here. And we're going to try to walk through each one of these characters and what happens to them in the story. And at the end of the day, try to piece it all together with, well, this is kind of how things progressed. Because there were a lot of moving parts of double crosses, triple crosses. Was there a quadruple cross in this? I don't think there was. I think we got close to one at one point in time. I don't think we did. Anyways, story opens up with the king. The king, Bundashan. No, by the way, this actually happens down in, what's the nation called? Vendia. I had to look at the map over there to actually figure out where this one is. It actually goes up into Gulistan and has a little bit of Kosala in it. For those of you who want to take a look at the map, you can do that, but not that important. What you need to know is this is later in Conan's career. He's already been a hetman for the Kozakai up near the Sea of Vayet, and he's now moved south. So it gives you a sense of roughly where in Conan's life we're talking about here. Anyways, put that aside. The king is dying. And the reason why he's dying is because these wizards, the People of the Black Circle, have got their hands on a piece of his hair. And they're using this to draw his soul out of his body. And the reason why they're doing that is because they want to stick that soul into a demon that they've conjured up from the pits of hell. And nobody actually ever explains why this was their grandiose scheme. Other than the fact that, they'd kind of been asked to do it by their people who were, working within Tehran. Because at the end of the day, the king of Tehran is a bit of a dick. And he wants to take over the entire area. And sowing any sort of problems in there is a good thing. And he actually has an agent working for him throughout this story. But we'll get back to that guy later. Anyways, the People of the Black Circle have agreed to do this. And they've got the soul on its way out. Anyways, the people within the actual kingdom are losing their minds. The people are blowing conch horns, they're banging on gongs. The priests of Asura can't figure out what the issue is. And for those of you who are interested, Asura is actually a fairly important deity. And in fact, I would suggest you go and you read Hour of the Dragon if you want to see more about what a priest of Asura can do, because they're actually pretty damn impressive. Anyways, King managed to get a moment of lucidity while he's in his bed, and his sister, the queen, Devi Yasmina, is there. And he says, hey, listen, here's the deal. My soul's getting drawn out. I don't want to be trapped in this demon body thing. Would you mind just taking out a dagger and stabbing me in the chest and killing me right now? And she's like, I don't know. Really? This is what we're doing. And he's like, yeah, we're going to do this. And so she takes out a dagger and stabs him. He dies, and that's where he's out of the story. As I say, there's a lot of characters that come in and out of this. We're going to stick with the key ones here. So, cut scene. He's dead. Smile on his face, by the way, because he's happy he's not trapped in a demon body. Okay, I'll take it. And we cut scene. We cut scene to a northern fort tied to a city within the same country. And we're going to talk to our friend Chunder Shan here. Now, Chunder Shan, I put him beside Devi for a reason. We're going to get back to this. Chunder Shan is actually a pretty clever guy. And he's really conservative. And he's sitting here and he's writing a note. And we're getting context as to what's going on right now in the north. Because some time has passed since the king has died. Devi Yasmina is hanging out being the queen. She's trying to run the country. And Chunder Shan here at this fort up in the north is dealing with these crazy guys, these hillmen that, quite frankly put, are led by our hero here, Conan. Let's put him up here because he's going to have a moment here. It's important to put him up there. So anyways, he's writing a note and saying, listen, I captured 7 of their leaders because they were stealing cows, but I was going to just hang them like we normally do, but I got your message. And we're trying to entreat with Conan right now of ransom. I don't really know why. We should probably just hang them. And he's in the middle of writing this note when the Devi and her lady-in-waiting, Getara, make an appearance because that was unexpected. And why not? So they show up at the fort, and the Chunder Shan here is like, why are you here? This is not a safe place. You probably shouldn't be here. And she's like, no, it's okay. I came with a huge retinue, but I left them back in the city, and I came here in secret. And all I did was I showed the guy at the front gate my ring. He just thinks I'm some sort of high-ranking messenger from the queen. He doesn't actually know I'm the queen. It's all good. And it's Chunder. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why are you here? And she says, well, here's the deal. You know the king. It kind of skips over the part where she stabs him, but says he was killed by the people of the Black Circle. And Chunder's like, oh yeah, those guys are horrifying. Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. Why are you here again? She's like, well, I want to attack them and kill them because I swore that I would kill them. And Chunder Shan's like, nobody's going to do that. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Nobody's ever going to do that. And she goes, whoa, hold on. I hear this Conan guy isn't afraid of anything. And Chunder Shan's like, well, yeah, he's kind of not afraid of anything. That would kind of make sense. She goes, I'm going to tell him to go kill the people of the Black Circle in exchange for his 7 chiefs. And Chunder Shan's like, I could see that. How about we talk about this tomorrow? Because it's nighttime. And we'll come back and circle the wagons on this, because all I've got back from Conan so far are just things like, I'm going to burn your village down if you don't give me back my people, because you're not agreeing to take the gold that I'm trying to give you. And Chunder Shan's like, yeah. And the queen's like, yeah. Everybody's like, yeah. And they say, well, let's break. We'll come back to it tomorrow. This is when everything goes to pot. Before I get into that, though, I need to explain 2 other key people here, because they're going to come into this in an entirely different way. All right. Remember how I said the people of the Black Circle were the ones drawing the soul out of the king? Who's down there on the floor, by the way. He's gone. He's not coming back. He's out of the story. Yeah, well, they aren't working from their castle. They've actually sent a vassal, or a vessel? No, a vassal. I'm going to go with a vassal, down into the city to actually make this plan happen. So, when the king was dying, we cut scene to a guy named Karam Shah. I'm putting him over here, because he belongs on this side for a reason, all right? Karam Shah actually is an agent of the Turanian Empire. And he actually isn't from Turan. He's actually from Iranistan in the Hyborian Age map, but works for Turan and works for the king there. He's sitting here and he's having a drink. Well, not really having a drink, but he's having a chat with his buddy Kemsa. Now, Kemsa is the vassal of the people of the Black Circle that has come to this city to enact the magic to make it all happen. Why is this all happening? Because this guy, Karam Shah, works for the king of Turan. The king of Turan has been entreating through his own priests to the people of the Black Circle to actually make this happen, which is why the whole thing started in the first place. Okay, we following? We're following. Okay, we understand why that now happened. Well, in broad brushstrokes, at least as best we can. Come back to current point, though, because while everybody's on the, okay, let's break over here. In this storyline, by the way. Break. Everybody take a break. And then they just wander off. Well, unfortunately, at that point in time, Conan actually makes his appearance. Conan makes an appearance talking with Chunder Shan, saying, what the hell? Like, my own people are going to kill me because you're not agreeing to give me back my men. What do you want? And he's like, well, I'm going to need you to go and attack the people. But there's a mission for you to do. And just as he's in the middle of explaining this mission, the Devi over here comes walking back in the room. And Chunder Shan makes a critical mistake, which is funny because up until this point in time, all Howard has written is how conservative he is. And he says, Devi. At which point in time, Conan, wait, Devi, why are you... Doesn't even take the time to ask the question, why, how, when, where? No, the where he would already know because he's there. Doesn't ask any of those questions. He immediately picks up the Devi, jumps through a window and says, hang my men now. And he's gone. He is gone. So we're gonna move these guys over here now. So Conan and the Devi have now left the city. And they are... Chunder Shan cannot tell anybody that the Devi has just been kidnapped, because that would be really bad news. Says, oh, I better get my men and go after them. And gets a bunch of men, gets on their horses, and rides after them. Gitara, the maid-in-waiting, starts to make her move at this point in time. This is where we start to get all the moving parts and things get really, really weird. So Gitara takes a ride back over to the city over here and tries to get the information and gets it over to her man Kemsa here. Because guess what? Gitara and Kemsa, they've been stupping. And quite frankly put, Gitara is actually one of the more interesting characters in this whole story that I think is actually underutilized. I think there should be a lot more of her, but that's another story for another day. Anyways, Gitara explains to Kemsa up on the roof of the building, this is what's happened, Chunder Shan can't let anybody know, Conan's gone with the Devi, here's the plan. You're going to not work for the people of the Black Circle anymore. You're just going to use your magic for you and me, because I love you and you love me, and we've already been stupping. You've already broken their rules. So I mean, once you're a little bit over the line, you're a lot over the line. So, let's go. And she goes, let's get out of here. We're going to go and we're going to get the Devi ourselves, right? We're then going to go back to the people of our own country, Ventia, and ransom her back. And then what's going to happen when they give us the gold? We're going to double cross her. And then get paid by the people of Turan to actually give them to them. And then we're going to take all that gold and we're going to set up our own country. And it's going to be awesome. And Kemsa's like, yeah, I can see this happening. So he goes with it and it gives him an opportunity. I guess he was kind of a repressed mage at this point in time to really go full bore and do whatever he wants. And they run off. But before they leave, they head downstairs and they walk past Karam Shah, who's having a nap, or supposedly having a nap. And Gitara says, let's kill him. And Kamsha says one of the most interesting lines, no, I've eaten his salt. I love that line. It's such a... It's so cool. It occurs in every comic adaptation, by the way. Really cool line. Says, no, I'm not going to kill him. But let's go. But first, we're going to have to go and kill the Hetman, the actual 7 chiefs, so that there won't be anything to ransom. So we'll just eliminate this whole issue to begin with. But we'll get on that. Now, they head off. Now, this is them heading off, so I'm going to move them away. They're off there doing their thing. See how everything's moving away from the central point? That's a visual effect. Karam Shah, at this point in time, says, you know, people on the roof who are plotting should probably talk a little quieter. I wasn't asleep the whole time. I'm going to write a note to the king. Dear King Eidi, here's what you got to do. You got to send, 3,000 of your men. Meet me up in the mountains at this place. I'm going to go there right now with 30 of my own men. And we're going to capture the Devi. And then this whole thing isn't an issue. Right? Makes sense. Sends it off in a pigeon and off he goes. Well, here's the issue. The issue is that this guy did not stop immediately. This guy was making a little more of an appearance and was actually working a little harder as things were going. Because the funny part is, there's actually an analogy, or at least a reference in the Robert Howard story, that he had people already at the fort. And anyway, I had a hard time following that one. Anyway, so he's off on his own. We're going to put him up here. Because he's off in the mountains on his own now, doing his own thing. All right. There's a little bit of a kerfuffle here, because at this point in time, a whole bunch of people run into one another while they're up on the mountains. Yar Afzal, who is the leader of a clan up there that happens to hang out and know Conan, tries to give Conan and the Devi a little bit of a safe grace period where they can stay there before he has to go off to the Afghulis. Makes sense. I like what's going on there. But at the end of the day, these two come along and screw the whole thing up by killing Yar Afzal. So he's out of there. Turning his own people against Conan. Conan has to run off. This guy actually Kemsa gets trampled by Conan when he's riding off on the horse, but of course that can't kill anybody. He goes and takes off after them. These guys actually run into the people of the Black Circle, the actual Alkalites. They get killed. Let's get them out of the way. People of the Black Circle have now taken the Devi, and they run off to the mountain on their own, leaving Conan alone. Conan's wandering on through the mountain. Who does he run into again? He runs into Karam Shah with his people left over. They agree they're going to go together, and they're going to attack the mountain, where the master of Yumsha is there. And it turns into a giant kerfuffle. Oh, by the way, this guy doesn't make another appearance. He just disappears at this point in time, because he's gone off into the mountains. But there's a reference to perhaps he is part of the actual group that comes back. We'll get back to that. Anyways, Conan and Karam Shah agree that they're going to go and get the Devi from the mountain, and the reason why they're going to do that is because they both have a vested interest in getting her. They go in there. As you can imagine, there's a massive sword and sorcery kerfuffle. Karam Shah has his heart ripped out of his chest. Conan actually ends up using some of the magic that he got from Kemsha when he was dying, and rescues the Devi, and critically wounds the master, but doesn't kill him. And they ride back in, and there's a long dialogue between Yasmina and Conan at this point in time, which I have for long expected and thought of was Robert's attempt, Robert E. Howard by the way, to make a stronger, more meaningful female character lead that would continue in Robert E. Howard Conan's stories that unfortunately never got a chance to come to fruition, because there was a lot of dialogue back and forth between Conan and Yasmina here as to what was going to happen next. Was she going to go off with Conan and they were going to create their own kingdom? Was she going to go back to her own people because she was a queen and she had the weight of 1,000 generations of queens behind her? Nobody really knows what was going to happen there, because unfortunately the Afghulis, who by the way at this point in time have turned on Conan because Kemsa killed their tribe's people back at the fort to make sure nobody could be ransomed, they have misinterpreted that as being Conan working with the enemy and getting their men killed on purpose. They've chased Conan into the mountains. While Conan was dealing with the whole Yasmina thing, they actually got trapped by a bunch of troops that have come down from Tehran now because Karam Shah told them to. There's a battle going on there where 500 of Conan's former men are facing off against, I think it's, 3,000 of the people who come down from Tehran? I believe it was 3,000. And at this point in time, the whole thing doesn't matter anymore because Conan says, I need to go help my men. Yasmina says, yeah, but my 5,000 men have finally arrived. I hear them off in the distance, probably because Karam Shah actually had brought them back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ride over there. I'm going to get them to come in from behind. We are going to basically attack these Turanian soldiers and slaughter them by being on both sides of them. They do the whole process. The plan works. Conan, again, in battle, proves himself to be a great leader. The Afghulis love him. They're like, yeah, we're going to bring you back as our leader. And this is where the master now makes his appearance once more to swoop in the shape of a vulture, and Conan kills it and it falls off a cliff, and as it's falling turns into the master, who then just falls to the bottom and dies. And that is the end of the master. The end of the story, you have Conan and the queen having a bit of a back and forth banter, basically respecting one another as leaders, but never actually agreeing that they would not have hostile intentions to go after one another later. You have to read the dialogue to figure that one out. Yeah, this is a long rambling one as to how to actually explain it, but that was as close as I could get to trying to make this succinct because there were so many moving parts, and I've actually skipped a lot of the back and forth material that happens in the middle, like this giant spider ball thing. Actually, it's not giant, it's tiny. We'll get to that when we get to the comics. Yeah, that was a lot. Okay, let's turn this around now. Now let's get into the Savage Sword of Conan version. And we're back at the desk. Now this time, unlike Battle Royale number 8, the first one we did, which was quite some time ago, well, we have a much better version of the Savage Sword version to go through. Last time we only had the softcover edition. This time, Titan has come through, and lo and behold, look what we got here. Boop, 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 boop. It is volume number 2 of the Savage Sword, and this is what has the entirety of the People of the Black Circle within it. So we're going to go through this because, well, it's a better reading experience than that other softcover. Thank goodness these omnibus are out now, making my life simpler. Now, we left a bookmark in here to go straight to the page, so let's just do exactly that. Bam! Oh, we missed it. Hold on. The bookmark was actually on the wrong page after all that. There's the cover of issue number 16, Wizards of the Black Circle, which is actually People of the Black Circle. And strangely enough, well, I guess it's not really all that strange. Those of you who have the Titan version of this, I will point out, you do not have the Worms of the Earth story in here. I'm going to assume that's some sort of copyright issue. Anywho, back on we go. People of the Black Circle, the Savage Sword edition is by Roy Thomas with art by John Buscema. Now, spoiler alert right now. If you have not seen this story in Savage Sword and you don't want to know what's in this, we're going to start flipping through this thing page by page. And if you really don't want to know, go to the next chapter. Or, the next chapter is going to take you to the Dark Horse version. If you really just want to know which one's the better one, go all the way to the last chapter, where we decide which one's the better one to go with. All right, you've been warned. All right, so let's get into the story here. The story opens off with, of course, the king, as I mentioned in our verbal, just diuretic walkthrough of what happens in the story. The Bunda Chand is dying, and they're very upset. His sister, Devi Yasmina, is there. Wazir makes a reference to the fact that it's probably poison, or it could be poison, and the Devi Yasmina, nope, it's not poison, I tell you, it's vastly black magic. And this is where we have the first of the times where the king comes back, yelling through the darkness with his voice that nobody can recognize. And cut scene, where we go straight over to Karam Shah and Kemsa plotting or having a conversation. And this actually is very accurate to the Robert E. Howard edition, because in that, the king isn't dead. You cut scene, and these two are saying, well, yeah, he's not dead yet, but the people already dirge for him. And like, well, they know he's not going to see another dawn. And of course, Karam Shah complains, why didn't your bosses do this earlier? He's like, oh, well, it's sorcery and it's not exact science. We had to wait till things were the right time. Circus in the house of the elephant, blah, 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 all that stuff. And they have a long conversation about how his king, or his leaders, the people of the Black Circle, are stronger than the king of Turan, because they've been able to do in this short period of time what his king couldn't do all of this time. Couldn't do it with 100,000 swords, is the exact reference they make here. And they explain the ways and why my actual bosses were able to do this is because we managed to get our hands on that hair that was given to that princess, and that's why we were able to tie back, and that's why we're now stealing his soul, just like in the Robert E. Howard story. Makes sense, right? Cut scene back over to the king. King once again comes back, and he's got a little bit of coherence to him, or cohesion. He says, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is horrible. It's the wizards of the Himalayas have done this. They're trying to put me into some sort of monster from hell. I need you to do a favor for me. I need you to kill me. I don't want to, but you have to. Listen to me, for crying out loud. I'm the king. And she does it, and he dies with a smile, or a smirk in his face, as you can see in this drawing. The actual write-up in the Robert E. Howard is that he had a smile, but whatever. And cut scene. Again, I'm doing cut scene here, but you got to bear in mind, this is actually pretty close to the transitions that we saw in Robert E. Howard's original story. So it's actually being done for effect. We then cut over to Chunder Shan. That's that guy I mentioned earlier, who's the actual leader of that fort that's up in the north. And he's writing a letter saying, how I've captured the headmen of 7 of these tribes. They were stealing cattle. I'm listening to your instructions. And then, of course, he looks up and the Devi is there. Devi, you here? Once again, there's a conversation about how actually dangerous it is that she'd be there. And she says, no, I just came around along with Katara. Everything's fine. Don't sweat it. She explains her plan and how she wants to actually have Conan go off and kill the people of the Black Circle because they're responsible for the death of the king. And Chunder Shan says, well, the people around here are all terrified of those people of the Black Circle. And she goes, yeah, but Conan's not going to be. And Chunder Shan can't really complain about that. And he says, well, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Off you go, off to bed. And sends them off to her room, and away they go. Goes back to his room, and lo and behold, Conan is there. And in a very similar way to what you saw in the Robert E. Howard story, Conan is basically threatening him, saying, don't touch the sword, I will kill you. And he's like, yeah, you probably would, but you'd never get your men back. And he says, it's okay, because I would then come back and burn this place to the ground. And you get a sense from Conan here in the dialogue of how important it is that he gets his men back, because his own men are yipping at his heels, because they're saying, why don't you have our headmen back, our leaders back? And Conan's like, well, what do you want? He's like, well, I don't want gold, but I do have a task for you. And it's a mission you must perform. And then the door opens and the Devi walks in, and Chunder Shan makes the mistake here that sets the whole story off, where he says, Devi. Conan recognizes Devi, and without even thinking, grabs her, kicks him to the ground, out the window. Off he goes. Now dare to hang my man. Jumps down, grabs his horse, and takes off. Chunder Shan grabs his wits about him once again and says, well, I can't let anybody know that Devi has been kidnapped. Guards are your death. Sergeant Lancers, there's been an abduction. Again, all he's going to point out here is that, hey, it's just a noble person that's been stolen, not the Devi. That would be bad. That would send the whole place into a whole revolt. As they say, the whole of the subcontinent would be in revolt. That's bad. Then we cut scene again. Boom, cut scene. You have Gitara now, who's made her way back after hearing what's going on with the Debbie and how she's been kidnapped. Comes back to the actual capital and makes a weird sound, calling up to... Actually, it's not even the capital that she goes back to. No, she goes to the village that's nearby the fort. Yes. Peshkari, that's it. That's the one right there. That is a long name and I kept forgetting. Anyway, she makes a sound at the wall and there's a rope that draws her up, and lo and behold, there is Kemsha, and she says, and well, it makes an allusion, she doesn't say it, to the fact that he's not tired after lifting her up over 100 and some odd feet. It's pretty good feat, I mean, yeah, I accept it. He says, where is Karamshah? I was asleep. Well, Conan has stolen the Devi. Oh, Karamshah will be glad to hear that. And this is where Gitara comes out with her plan and just basically turns him to be more, let's say, in line with her wishes here. Let's have you and I, since you and I love one another, you turn yourself on the leaders in the Black Circle. And what we'll do is we'll take the whole world, the whole continent for ourselves. Well, at least carve out a continent for ourselves. And she does, oh, come on, I love you. You've already been stuffing me. You've already broken the rules a little bit. Once you've broken it a little, you've broken it a lot. So let's do this. Head downstairs as they're heading on their way out, because she says, well, we got to get moving. And Karamshah's there, and she says, you better kill him. He goes, no, I've eaten his salt. We'll just move on and do our thing. And that's really where, cut scene to them being gone, Karamshah, now I guess he was faking being asleep, wakes up, or fakes waking up, says, those people who plot on the roof probably should lower their voices. Finds out what's going on and says, well, my masters in Tehran will actually be pretty happy to hear about this. Sends off a letter to them saying, listen, I need you to send a whole bunch of your troops down to meet me at this particular location, 3,000 horsemen. We'll get the Devi, we'll bring her back, and you'll be able to take this whole subcontinent by storm. Signs it off with his actual name, because his real name is not Karamshah. And then, cut scene, he's gone. At this point in time, he's effectively grabbed some horses, he's headed off into the mountains himself, basically to meet these 3,000 men. This cutscene that we go to now, though, is back to the fort where Conan has kidnapped the Devi in the first place. And this is where we start to see Kemsa and Gitara really coming into their own, because Kemsa now isn't listening to everything the people of the Black Circle have been saying to him. And he's like, no. I can actually just stretch my limbs here, spread my wings, be more magical, do all the things I know how to do. And he just appears in front of this guard, right where all the prisoners' quarters are, and says, whoa, what's your job here? He says, well, it's to guard the gate. No, you're going to listen to me. Open the door immediately. And Gitara comes out and says, oh, okay, we'll get him to give some horses. No, there's no need for that. You just go kill yourself. And this is where they do this really strange thing where, quite frankly put, I think Howard wrote this in to be just a little bit of horror to sit in the story, where the guy who's the guard puts a spear against the jut in the wall, basically the base of the wall, and then slowly lowers himself down onto the spear, killing himself. It really described it in a horrifying effect in the story, and this does a fairly good job of actually doing it. Once he's inside, he runs into another guy who attacks, and he just swats him out of the way and hits him just a little bit on his neck, but that's enough to break his neck and he dies. And this is where you get a sense that Kemsha really does have some sort of ability here with his bare hands to deliver a lot of force. He then blows in an iron door, and Gitara's watching all this in the background. Whoo! I think I picked a winner. I would think that too, honestly. And as he wanders into the prisoners area, he does exactly what's described in Robert E. Howard, where he takes some powder, drops it on the floor, it makes a ball. The ball then turns into a smoke, goes into the chamber where the 7 chiefs are, and basically strangles them. I guess you could call it strangling. There's a depiction here where you have some hands going on it, like this is a ghostly hand coming up and grabbing this guy by the head, but there's no real sound that happens other than kind of like a blub of these people drowning. At least that's what's written in Robert E. Howard's story, and that's again what you see here. Now this little scene here though, he's like, well, we're going to get you a steed and we're going to be in Afghanistan before anybody else. And he starts to really get off on himself here. It's just like, oh, look how great I am. He's starting to really get a sense of, I'm pretty damn powerful. Pretty cool. Cut scene back now to Conan and the Devi who are heading off. The Devi's giving a little bit of noise back saying, I really don't like this idea. And Conan's like, no. I am going to trade you over. I think they'll trade you easily for my 7 Afghuli lives. And she's like, well, I'm kind of screwed here. Struggling's kind of a waste of time, so I'm just going to, be quiet, which was what Robert E. Howard wrote. And as Conan's weaving his way through some of the narrower parts, suddenly a spear hits his horse out of the darkness, and he dives off carrying the Devi with him. When he hits the ground, he immediately stuffs her in a cleft and says, just stay out of sight and be quiet. And one person attacks him, and at this point in time, he just basically comes down with his knife and kabonk, kills this person. I think he cleaves him in the middle of his head in the Robert E. Howard story, but you don't really get an image of it here. And at this point in time, he hears a voice in the background saying, "In you, curs, and take them, don't flinch." And Conan immediately recognizes the voice as his buddy Yar Afzal and says, "Is that you?" And he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Conan, is that you?" And basically have a moment where everybody's patting one another on the back. "Hey, look, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you. What are you doing out here?" And they basically have a fun time, well, chatting and getting caught up. And Conan's like, "Yeah, but look what I got." And they're like, "Holy crap, Eyes of Asura." Again, that reference to Asura. Again, anybody really wants to know how powerful the priests of Asura are? Go ahead and read that Hour of the Dragon story. Fantastic tale. Anyways, Conan says, no. This is how I'm actually going to get my Afghulis back. But right now we need to, hide. Because, unfortunately, her people are coming after us. Like, yeah, they're closing the trail. I can hear their hooves in the flint. Come with our village and we'll protect you. Well, it's really cold now. Conan heads off to get on their horses, since his horse has been killed. Grabs a cloak off of one of the guys who's running along, wraps it around the Devi, and she falls asleep on the way back. And we have a cutscene here where you see her sleeping effectively. Now, what you don't know here is that she's actually asleep in a Wazari hut. And in the background, there's the voice of "A rare prize, Conan, fit for a chief of the Afghulis." And Conan's grumbling, but no, this is not for me. This is so I can get my 7 headmen blast their souls. And then that's basically where this particular issue ends. So what you really got there was a pretty good introduction to what effectively Robert E. Howard was writing in his story. Didn't go too far afield. I think everything was fairly close. And I really do like the fact that they included that "I've eaten his salt" line. Always sticking in these obscure lines just adds to the value of the written format when you see it in a comic. Kind of cool. All right, let's get into the second part of this thing. So it's, there. All right, chapter 17, or no, chapter 2. Book number 17 is Savage Sword. Now, as always, when you do move from one issue of Savage Sword and the story is continued, you generally get a splash page that'll walk you through what's happened and brings you up to the point where this story picks up. This one starts off with the fact that Yasmina is not sure if the night's events before were a dream or a nightmare, or if it's all true, and then she finds herself awakened in a local hut. And this is actually pretty close to what Robert E. Howard did describe in his prose piece. She wakes up and there's a local hill woman there, and she's grilling some meat on a small smoldering fire. And Conan comes in, talks to her, and she says, "Hey, you probably want some meat, after our bout last night." And Conan says, "Well, for some things, I can always find the strength." And he sort of kicks her to the ground, and Yasmina kind of winces at this, or grimaces at this display. But between the two of them, it's kind of playful, and they're having a good time. Not actually what happened in the Robert E. Howard component. And that is a weird one right there. We'll probably come back and mention that when we get to the actual wrap-up at the end of this. Conan then turns around and comes over to Yasmina and says, "Here, I'll give you some food." Yasmina is somewhat apprehensive to take it, but recognizes she needs the energy and sits down to eat. Conan once again brings her up to speed to the fact that she's going to write a note basically demanding his 7 men for her as a ransom. And then Yar Afzal comes in and says, "Well, the men are murmuring, and hey, Ashita, would you get out?" And then has a conversation with the fact that, my men are saying, "Why are we taking the risk when we should just kill you and take this rich woman for ourselves? Come on outside, let's have a conversation with the men, because, they're my men, I can handle them, but I want you to hear it for yourself." So they get brought up to speed with the fact that basically Yasmina's men found the dead horse, found the man that Conan killed in the last issue, and have assumed that the Wazuli have in fact stolen the Devi. As a result, they've gone to the closest Wazuli village and just burned it to the ground. The people from that village then left, came back with reinforcements, and then attacked the Yasmina Devi's, or Devi Yasmina's men. Devi Yasmina, I gotta say that the right way, I keep flipping it around for some reason in my head. They attacked her men, and wounded a whole bunch of them and chased them back out, and even at that time hurt Chunder Shan. And they then went on to the point saying, "Well, why are we turning around and risking our backs for this guy? And while he's going to reap the rewards." And Conan loses the patience and says, "Listen, if you have something to say, draw your sword. I don't ask any man to fight for me." And the guy turns out, "If you hurt me, 50 men will be on your back." And this is where Yar Afzal pipes up and says, "Are you kidding me? I'm the leader of this group, not you. You don't decide when 50 men are going to suddenly attack my guest. Get down there and see if any more information has come back from the scouts." Chases him out and then says, "Okay, here's what we're going to do to actually trick these guys that belong to the Devi Yasmina." And that's how they kind of walk these guys out and focus on this guy who's now wandering away. As he's wandering away, he runs into the very person, Kemsha, who's actually on their tail. And he ensorcels him, draws a shape on the ground, and suddenly a little black ball appears inside that. He says, "I need you to take this to Yar Afzal." And he's ensorcelled, off he goes. And Katara comes out and says, "Well, why'd you do that?" And she goes, "Well, think about this. If Yar Afzal suddenly dies,
Well, they're going to turn on Conan pretty darn quick. And that's probably going to be our opportunity here. So just wait and watch what I'm going to do here. I don't need to do everything. Sometimes other people can do stuff for me. So this guy comes wandering back. Yarasa's like, whoa, didn't I just tell you to do something? What the heck? And he thinks he's high and that he's got the look of a lotus eater. So he knocks him down to the ground, tells them to get him back to his room, and picks up this trinket that he was carrying. And just as he picks it up, he screams and drops dead, and a spider climbs out and wanders on off. And just as that happens, a voice in the background yells, Yar Afzal is dead, kill the outlander. Well, that was all the Wazari needed. Now that voice was in fact Kemsa's voice, because none of the hillmen would have said that. No. In fact, anybody who survived knows they didn't say it, because it came out directly above them. Pretty weird. Anyway, Conan fights them off, fights his way back to the stable where he knows the Devi Yasmina is, guts a bunch of them, and ends up slamming the door and breaking a wrist just as he throws one last guy in over him and bolts the door. That guy then gets up, and Conan and this guy are fighting while the guys outside have got a battering ram going. Conan fights him towards the stallion. The stallion is a little upset by all the action, kicks the guy, breaks his spine in 3 places, and he dies. This is when Devi Yasmina says, oh, thank goodness you're alive. She's like, well, hold on, why would you care if I was the one who lived or died? And she sort of gets her composure back. She goes, well, it's better you than the wolves out there. Then Conan says, okay, well, we got to get out of here. We're going to use this horse. So he jumps up, grabs the panicking horse, saddles it, and says, there's a secret door back here. Yar Afzal showed me when he was drunk once. We'll go through this, because it takes us right out of here into the ravine behind this hut. Just as they head out, see them heading out here, these guys break in through the door, and they're gone. And just as they're gone, who do they run into? Kemsa, and they trample them down. And of course, they look up, and they see Gitara up in the distance, screaming because, well, her lover is now been trampled to the ground. That's pretty scary stuff to see. Anyways, they ride on off, and at this point in time, because they're coming into the place where Kemsa has just been taken down, they run into all manner of hell. And unfortunately, Conan doesn't see any of this, happens behind him, but I guess he hears the screaming later on. But, whatever. All these guys are now a little bit distracted, busy dealing with that mess, and a little too busy to go ahead and get Conan. We then cut scene to Conan, who is now heading off with Yasmina, and she's like, well, where are we going now? Well, we're going to Afghanistan. Remember, this is the whole thing. We got to get you traded over, because the Wazugas are going to be after us, and I got to get you back to Afghanistan, because that's where we'll be safe. We just need to make sure that we're not sighted on the way there. And it's like, who's that man that we rode down? I don't know, I've never seen him before, but why would a scholar be out here? And he's like, yeah, but I recognize the lady. That was my lady in waiting, Gitara. And Conan's like, yeah, but how did she, if she's your lady in waiting, how did she get all the way out here? But that doesn't make any sense, because all she came with was a scholar. Who would survive all the way out here in the mountains with just a scholar? This does not make sense. Well, what are we going to do? And then it says, and by the way, I also don't know what that voice was, because remember, it could be some sort of a sorcerer, because that guy who came back definitely looking sorceful to me. And then that voice came out of nowhere. Seems a little off to me. It's like, well, what are we going to do? But then he says, wait a minute, somebody's coming down the trail. And this is where they say, it's a woman. Aha, hold on. And he's like, we're going to get her clothes. You're not going to kill her for her clothes, right? No, we're going to pay her. Don't worry about that. He says, listen, give me your clothes. Give them this woman, I'll give you this gold coin. She just strips down right away and says, here, all right, give me my gold, I'm off. And Conan then turns around and gives it to Yasmina and says, here, go behind that rock to change. Why? Because, well, she can't continue running around with the silky clothes that she's wearing, because it's making her look, well, a little too standoutish. And they're getting torn a lot. Let's just put it that way. She comes back out, and Conan is quite impressed with her here. Now, this is something that is in Robert E. Howard's original work. Conan was very impressed with her when she came out and she looked like that. You are now real. You're no longer this hoity-toity thing. And then he throws away the silk thing. She says, why'd you do that? Well, because if they find her in the clothes, they're going to torture her. And then they're just going to lead her after us anyways. This way, she's just going to say, hey, listen, somebody came and took my clothes, and that's just going to be it. And it'll take, well, probably a little bit longer for them to actually find her in the first place, because she's not going to be standing out because they're just wearing all sorts of silky clothes. So they go riding on off, and they say, but you don't worry about it. Everything here is fairly deserted because, well, we're getting too close to that. That's the home of the Black Seers. He's like, whoa, the Black Seers, those guys are bad. He's like, would you attack me? He's like, no, I wouldn't, unless they impose themselves on my will. And this is when they see this whole carpet thing that has terrified so many people. Conan makes a comment that he's seen 500 men flying away whenever they see this. This is, in theory, the actual transportation tool for the very alkalites of the leader of the Black Circle. But we'll find out more about that later. Conan then rides around a corner and finds himself basically with a rearing horse that won't go any further, because it's kind of like it's hit an invisible wall. Conan can't feel the wall, but the horse won't go any further. And they turn around, and lo and behold, there's Kemsa. Kemsa tries to actually hypnotize Conan, but he finds out his hypnotism doesn't work because, well, Conan's not from around there. And this is a funny thing that Robert E. Howard wrote in his work. He basically said that people from the East, because they had hypnotism in their actual ancestry and know of it, were predetermined to be prey to it. Whereas the Sumerians don't even know it exists, so to him it means nothing. So Conan attacks because it's not working. And this is where you get that sense of, well, Kemsa is not some weakling. He chops down at Conan. Conan goes down like a drunken bull. It's quite something. And just as he's turning around to come back, there's a little cut scene where you have Gitara being recognized by the Devi, and suddenly there's a look of anger. Not in the Robert E. Howard piece. Just as you turn around to look back, suddenly he's distracted. He goes, what are you looking at? And then there's Yimsha's carpet comes down, and this is the first time we see the acolytes, the 4 men. Now, Kimsha is very concerned and very scared of this. So is Gitara. Now, the Devi and Conan are on the other side. These guys are not paying any attention to them. So these guys are thinking, oh, maybe we should just, get the heck out of here. But as this is happening, they're watching what's happening. It's almost like a battle of wills. These guys are trying to hypnotize and tell him what to do. He's fighting off and trying to tell them what to do, but he's reaching into his shirt and holding on to something while he's doing it. With his other hand, he's holding on to Gitara as an anchor. Well, these guys recognize, well, I'm not going to be able to beat him because he's too good. But Gitara is the weak link here. If she's his anchor, let's just take her away. They hypnotize her and they walk her over to the cliff. And he's losing his mind now because this is his lady love. And he lets go of everything. Goes running over to try to stop her, but he's being worn down by the hypnotism of these 4 guys. And just as she gets to the edge, this guy laughs and gives her own consciousness back as she's in the process of falling, so that she is aware of the fact that she's falling and screaming and dying. Now, Kemsha's not going to do too well with that. As you can see here, he's got the little guitar whimper going on down there. And he turns to attack, and one of them stomps the ground. And as he stomps the ground, it literally takes that entire ledge that he's on and makes it fall off. And Kemsha falls to his apparent death. Conan's like, okay, well, let's get out of here. But it's too late. They have turned around. And now it's too late because they once again do this little carpety move of theirs. There's a strong wind. The Devi is ripped away from him. He tries to slash out into the wind and only gets knocked into the rock. And when he comes to, they are gone. And that's the end of, well, chapter 2. All right, let's get into chapter 3 on this one, which takes us into issue number 18. Let's see if we can actually get to, hey, there you go, issue number 18. And not too far off on the cover image to what is going to happen in the story, but that doesn't, I think, happen. No, it doesn't happen in this issue. Maybe this should have been better off on number 19, but never mind that now. We're going to set that aside. Okay, into the story. Splash page. You get a little bit of a wrap up here. Conan is once again saying, well, they're gone. That's not good. And by the way, a reminder, Roy Thomas, John Buscema. Everything's going well. He's like, oh, she's been held. That's bad. I need her back. She's gone to that mountain. Oh, all these things are bad things. Damn the murderous souls. Jumps on his horse and off he goes. Now, throughout this part here, you hear that he's tearing down this trail and he's running at breakneck speed on his horse, but you don't really have a sense of what he's doing. Is he going after her or not? And this is when he looks down and he sees 500 of his Afghuli men, and he's yelling at them saying, hey, listen guys, I'm going up to Yzma too, and this is when they cut him off and they say, traitor. And then there's a lot of back and forth. There's a conversation that occurs where they explain to him that, no, we expected you to go and get our 7 leaders, but our 7 leaders are dead. He's like, man, I just met with that guy the other day. I'm like, yeah, we know you met with him because you sold us out because you're a traitor. And they open fire on him. Well, Conan can't really out-yell that many people that far away. So he turns back up the trail and goes the other way. And as he's going along, who does he run into? Kemsha. This guy has climbed all the way up from the bottom of the chasm, and he is not looking good. And he's asking, well, where are they? Well, they took the Devi with them. They've gone back to the Daniel Castle. I'll go, I'll follow them. They kill Gitara, and I will kill them. The acolytes, the ministers, I'll follow them. And then he sort of says, wait, I can't move. Not anymore. Okay, you follow them, barbarian. Follow me. He says, I'm going to. And this is where suddenly you have this change in Kemsha. And this is why I kind of think Gitara and Kemsha are kind of like these unspoken, like soft heroes, almost anti-heroes within this story. Because he's so angry. He's like, no. They killed Gitara. I'm going to help you. What you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to fight them for me. Take this waist belt. I got it from a Stygian priest. It'll aid you even though it failed me. And Conan looks at it and there's some discussion of him discovering that he's made it of human hair. And this is where he gives him some really good advice. He says, break the crystal globe with the 4 golden pomegranates. Beware the master's transmutations. I'm going. She's waiting for me in hell. And then there was another comment up here. Oh yes, here it is. There's another good one. And follow the golden vein through the abyss. He gives him some really good hints. Now to Conan, this is just gibbering because he doesn't understand the context. But he does say, well, I'm not going to throw away this belt. I'm going to put it on. All right, I'll listen to you. Let's go. And he starts riding off and he's heading to the mountain. As he comes around, who does he run into? Karam Shah. And he beats him against a wall. Didn't really happen in the Robert E. Howard story. And he says, why are you after me? And they have a whole conversation about the Devi. And this is where they actually agree at the end of the day they're going to work together, because Conan explains that people of the Black Circle have gotten her. He says, listen, I'll work with you because we both want her for different reasons. And once we got her, we can fight it out. And they say, fine, let's do it. He says, what about your men? And he says, well, men, you can stay here and die because the hillmen are going to kill you. Because, well, you were riding with me, quite frankly put. Or you come with me and we go and die on the mountain together. And they all sort of said, well, we're kind of screwed anyway, so let's follow you. And off they go following her. Cut scene now back to Devi, who wakes up on a dais, or a bed, that's covered in black velvet. And as she's there, she sees the master of Yumsha, and she says, why'd you bring me here? And he goes, well, you were looking for me. And she's like, yeah, you're one of the Black Seers. He's like, yeah, and? She said, well, you slew my brother, why'd you do that? And he says, you couldn't understand what I was doing. Listen, one of my priests that actually worked in Tehran asked me to do that, but I'm kind of bored with that right now. I got other things to do, and he desires an empire, so I have other amusements now. And she grabs a knife that she finds and attacks. Only he goes, ha! You see this little ha here? This ha is important because when she does that, he does that, she drops to the floor, looks at her hand, and it's now covered in lotus, which she then drops because lotus blossoms are bad. And she jumps back up on the bed because it's probably the only safe thing. So anyways, this guy turns around and says, no, I'm going to keep you as my slave now, and basically explains that this is why he's doing this, and this is his new distraction. And she goes, no, you dare not. And he says, no, I'm going to break you down into your bare bones so that anything I say to you is going to be exactly what you say you're going to do. Then he casts a spell, and she has to go back, and she starts reliving all the past lives that she's had from being Adam, all the way through the point where she is now. But while she's doing it, it's particularly painful because she remembers all these indignities with the mindset and the ego that she is a Devi, and that she should not be going through any of these. She comes to, and this is when she gets the final bit of horror, where the robed figure gets up, walks to her, grabs her hand, and looks down at her, leering at her, and his face is rotted. And this is where she passes out. Cut back to Conan now, where he's riding along with Karam Shah, and they find the base of the tower, and they say, we're going to leave the horses here, and we're going to go. And as they're walking up to the first tower, which is where the acolytes are, this one right here, a dog attacks, and unfortunately drives one of their men crazy. But that doesn't happen until a little bit later. First, they cut it down into bits. As they're continuing on, a hawk attacks and kills another one of their men. They shoot it with an arrow, and it drops down. That guy's dead. Finally, these little bubbly, cloudy things come down. One of the guys goes, there's nothing to this. And he pokes it with a sword, and he does that. Kaboom! He burns, and there's nothing left but a charred mark on the ground, and basically his burnt hand holding onto his sword. So they figure out that metal actually sets these explosions off, so they shoot them with bows and arrows in order to make them all blow up before they get to them. Actually a pretty smart maneuver on their part. And here's where you actually see the acolytes start to come out and start to do crap. They come out on the roof with this giant horn that they blow, and the whole ground shakes. And Karam Shah just skewers this guy, and he falls off. Now, in the Robert E. Howard story, two of these guys get skewered. The first one gets skewered and falls off, but leaves the horn hanging off the top. The second guy comes out, and he picks it up, he gets skewered, and then the horn falls off. But we'll take this for what it is. In the meantime, while this whole horn thing with Karam Shah has been going on, Conan goes and starts hacking at the door. And only his savage instincts, which is an interesting reference because it's exactly out of the Robert E. Howard piece, it happens here as well, make him step to the side and avoid a molten lead bath coming down him. But this is also a point in time where he realizes, wait, that's a conventional weapon. They're all out of magic. That's kind of an interesting thing. Karam Shah, anyways, skewers that guy, and at this point in time, Conan does get through the door and sees the guys running out the back door. And he does actually step into the room at this point in time. Sees them running out the back door until a rock falls, and then he says, okay guys, I've made it safe for us, straight through we go. Not actually what happened in the Robert E. Howard story. The Robert E. Howard story, he stepped in, saw them going through, and then dove back out when the rock came down, and then they went around the tower to chase these guys off into the distance. So they see them running along, and they see them dive off of a cliff, or what's it apparently a cliff, and they see them in this morass, this abyss, and they shoot an arrow down, because he says, well, I can just pick them off from here. Only the arrow, once it hits this fog, just sort of languishes and falls in a weird way. So they said, well, how are we going to get past this? And like, well, there was something about following gold. They went down here. There was something we were supposed to do. And this is where the mad dog guy attacks, falls over, and as he's falling down, floats all the way down to the ground with the look about him that he's purple, like he's been constricted, like he hasn't done any air to breathe. Kind of a weird thing. Anyways, Conan says, no, I'm going down here. Heads down. Unfortunately, does a little bit of a sidestep and doesn't exactly follow the golden thread, at which point in time he starts gasping for air. He fights his way back up, gets a good breath and says, oh, okay, yeah. Follow the golden vein. And they actually do follow him, and they make their way across safely. And as they're going through it, there's clearly a dialogue here of the fact that they feel like they're in a narrow corridor of air on the golden vein, and around them is just death. Makes it pretty scary and eerie, actually. They come up on the other end. This is where these guys, who are the guys who used to be in the tower, who have no magic left, now decide to attack them. And when they do, they get slaughtered. They actually get tossed back into the mist, and one of this guy's, Karam Shah's men, dies. So it leaves Conan, Karam Shah, and 4 guys now to go on to the main tower. Wow, this thing is just breakneck speed. All right, into the final book here. Let's get right into this, because this actually comes to a heady conclusion in issue number 19. Things actually come to a conclusion. Wings of Death, does that actually cover fit anything in this one? It does kind of, that's a story for another day, because it also has the soul-searing conclusion of People of Black Circle. All right, get into the story here. Once again, recap page where, okay, fine, let's go and attack the tower. There's you, me, 4 other guys. We're good to go. They go wandering off towards the tower, and they see this giant castle, and they wander up to it. And this is a great scene here. I really like this one. Conan sees this snake, this metal snake on a door. He's like, wait a minute. And this is where classic Dungeons & Dragons comes into play. He sees a snake door handle. It's like, I don't know. I've seen these things come to life before and then stab people with their venomous, fangy things when you go to open the door. And he says, I'm not touching that thing. And he cuts his head up. It's kind of funny here because the actual image shows he was right. See the mouth position here. It's only partially open. Over here, wide open. That thing was totally going to bite him. So he then says, screw it. I'm just going to hack my way through the door. And he does. He breaks down the door with his sword. And they say, all right, leave a guy here and let's go in. And just as they leave the guy in there and they go in, the actual master of Yumsha appears above him, laughing. He shoots an arrow instantly at him. This guy catches it and just tosses it back. And this guy, I guess this is instinct. This is also, I guess, how these guys survive. You catch a languishing arrow when it's coming at you because you'd use that later. And unfortunately, it turns into a snake. And he's screaming, trying to get this deadly viper off him as it's attacking his arm. And Conan runs back and finds himself stopped dead. And he bangs his sword and he hears a clang, but it can't get through. And they look out and they see this guy with just a normal arrow in his arm. So again, you're getting to that sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? Hypnotism being more the issue that's actually killing this guy than anything else. But anyways, they decide to head for it because there's only one other door. They get to the other side, they find an open door, and there is a table in the middle with a crystal globe that they describe having 4 golden pomegranates in it, but there's 4 snake heads around it. Now, remember the snake head we just saw at the door, right? Right? Like, I'm not crazy here, right? Like, there's a theme here. Robert E. Howard seems to love killing snakes in his stories, and Conan's really good at killing snakes. Anyways, 4 acolytes now appear, and just as they're thinking, let's get them, they raise their hand, and everybody stops dead. Like, dead in their tracks. And it's interesting because in Robert E. Howard's piece, I had to check this, because when I saw this image here of this thing coming up, I kind of thought, I don't remember Robert E. Howard saying this was this like monstrous thing. And in the prose piece, he did very clearly say they raised their hand, but it was not a hand. So I'm going to give that to him an artistic license. I'll give it to him. Anyways, Conan in this dialogue in his head clearly gives a sense that he knows he can go backwards if he wants to. He just knows he can't go forward, which is weird. Anyways, the actual acolytes start waving people up, and all of the 4 men go wandering up, hand over their sword, and they get their heads cut off, one at a time. And as this is all happening, Conan is just horrified. He's trying to figure out what to do. And he finally gets a sense, wait, it's the belt from Kemsha. That's what it is. That's what's making me think I can actually move here a little bit. He fights his way to it where he grabs onto it. Once he grabs onto it, he knows he can run forward. He's running for the 4 acolytes. When suddenly he hears a voice as he's running past that thing. The actual crystal says, break the crystal ball. He's like, oh, yeah, break the crystal ball. I remember now. Stops dead in his tracks. So even if somebody was reading his mind, and Robert E. Howard wrote this in, they couldn't have foretold what he was going to do, because he turned instantly, attacked it, and there was a smash. And that smash sound resounded through the whole castle. And when he does that, and snakes come to life. The acolytes are writhing in pain because he's smashed it a little bit, but not enough. The snakes attack and Conan's in a fury. Everything else is slowed because of this whole hypnotism thing these guys have done. Conan's not slowed. He slices the heads off of all of these snakes and then smashes it again. And when he does, there's a thunderclap and all the crystal in the world sounds like it's broken. And when this happens, the 4 acolytes lie dead. Karam Shah stands up. He's like, wow, that was crazy. Did you hear all that crystal? He's like, yeah, I did. He's like, wait a minute. I don't think we're alone. And then here you go. The Master of Yumsha, the big showdown. This is going to be it. And Conan's like, yeah. And then Karam Shah's like, hey, you work for me. He's like, no, you work for me. And he's like, you know what? No, I'm going to take your heart. And he does. And he does this thing where he reaches out and he says, I'm going to take your heart. And this guy screams. Poor Karam Shah. He's not having a good day. And his heart bursts out of his chest. And the Master of Yumsha now has it. He tosses it at Conan's feet while the swirling energies fly around him. And Conan's like, no, I'm going to come and get you. And the swirling energy comes more. And in the Robert E. Howard piece is a very clear description of the amount of energy being thrown at Conan. He has a very clear sense of being buffeted about by all sorts of forces, but he's holding on to this belt that he got from Kemsha, which is helping him. And as he gets closer and closer, the Master now has a look of fear. And he strikes and he sees something wisp away. And you can clearly see it here. I think we know where we're going with this one, right? I think we all know. He goes following through and hears a scream, and there's the Devi, and the snake, a giant snake is there, and Conan takes his sword and throws it and spears it right through the neck, and it turns on him. And as it turns on him, he takes a dagger out of his belt, and he spikes it up through the mouth so it can't open its mouth. And then he reaches forward, because it's trying to wrap around him, reaches forward with the one free hand he has and grabs his sword out of it, which in the Robert E. Howard story was not a sword, but it was a knife. But never mind that now. Reaches, grabs the sword out, and hacks at it. Almost goes through the darn thing, so it drops him and takes off. And as he opens behind the curtain that it went through, he sees that it's not the slithering of a snake, but human footprints. And then the Devi's there, and they kiss, and they smooch. And this was actually just like another Robert E. Howard story, but I'm biting my lip here because I'm not going to, nope, that's a rabbit hole. We're stopping right there. Anyways, kisses her because he is the Rico Suave of the Hyborian age. And then suddenly realizes, hey, wait a minute. I'm in a castle where a giant snake thing just tried to kill us, and it's still out there and alive. We should probably GTFO. Grabs her and says, let's get out of here. As they're heading out, she's like, yeah, but the acolytes, yeah, I already killed them. Don't worry about it. You don't need to look at them. Everything's fine. They climb down, they head out, and as they're heading out, they grab the horses, and as they ride off, they're having this long conversation. This is the conversation I said Robert E. Howard wrote into the story as his attempt to make a stronger female character. I still stand by that with Devi Yasmina. I think she is Robert E. Howard's attempt to build almost like an equal to a Conan in bullheadedness and single-mindedness and the ability to focus on what she wants and the things that she's willing to do to get there. Now, she might not have all the physical traits that Conan has, but emotionally and as a character, the strength seems to just carry her through. Look what she just went through, for crying out loud. I don't know. Anyways, Conan says, no, you're going to come with me. And she's like, no, you come with me. And he's like, oh, you're going to let me marry you? And he's like, no, well, they're customs. And he's like, no, you're totally coming with me. And as they're riding off, they're suddenly cut off because they hear the thunder of steel in this conversation. And this is where Conan now sees his former Afghulis, his 500 men that wanted to kill him, and they're being slaughtered by the 3,000 men that came down from Iranistan that Karam Shah had written to actually help to capture the Devi in the mountains. And since they had nothing else to do, they said, hey, why not kill a bunch of Afghulis while we're here? And they've worked them into a crescent shape. It's a trap. And it's not going to last for long. And Conan's torn. What do I do? Do I go down here? Do I stay here? And she's like, hold on. If you go down there on your own, I'm just going to die. And he's like, Crom, what can I do? This line right here, directly out of Robert E. Howard. Conan was heavily conflicted as to what to do here. Then they hear the sounds. It's her own riders who have now come. She says, listen, you do not want to lose your men over your own ego. Give me the horse. I'll go get my men. We'll hit them from either end. It'll be fine. You lead your men from this side. I'll lead my men from the other side. They'll be dead. And that's exactly what Conan does. He doesn't even think twice. He just says, you win. Just go. Climbs down, grabs the horse, fights with his men, and there's an epic battle that's in here. And during this, Conan at one point in time was actually wondering, is she going to betray me? Is she just going to ride off and I'm going to die here? But she does come through. And he says, you kept your word, Debbie. And this is where she's having a conversation when suddenly a large vulture comes down. This is the Master of Yumsha. He's back for a final attack. And Conan jumps forward, grabs, slices and stabs. And as it falls off a nearby cliff, it turns into the man who then goes off and dies. Then there's a bit of dialogue back and forth where he says, listen, I will come and make things even later. You just go off on your way. And she's like, oh, no. You come make things even later. He's like, no, I'm going to come with 50,000 men. That's fine. I'm going to come with 100,000 men. They wave at one another as a sign of respect. And that is the end of the story, which is actually pretty darn close to what Robert E. Howard had in here. This is pretty good. This is actually very good. When I did this in Battle Royale number 8 initially, I said, this is a very good adaptation. There are very few small pieces in here that went awry. Very few. All right, let's get into the Dark Horse version. All right, we're back, and we are into the Dark Horse version now. Now, last time we went through the giant omnibus. That's what we did for the Savage Sword of Conan, but this time we have the actual comics. That's right, I finally got the last 3 issues of this, which is stupid. I say last 3 because it's only a 4-part series, but whatever, we got them. We're good to go. Let's get into it. Issue number 1. The story starts, again, clanging of gongs, conch shells blowing. People are out there, they're crying, they're saying, oh, Ashur, please save our Lord, blah, blah, blah. Having a whole conversation because the king is dying. And there is the Devi Yasmina, and there is the king. He's being leeched. There's a conversation about poison. And this is pretty cool, actually, because they do write in here. No. There's 5 skulls in the tower of people who testify to the fact that, other attempts to take his life through poison have failed. That actually was not in the Savage Sword version. So seeing it here is kind of cool. And I do like the fact that they did draw in the slaves, the wailing slaves, which were referenced in Robert E. Howard's version as sitting in the background. So no. This is clearly the work of black magic, not poison. And then we have the first time where the king comes forward and says, oh my goodness, I'm in a place with roaring winds, and he's having a whole conversation, and they yell. Cutscene now to Kamshat. Remember, I said the cutscene is exactly what Robert E. Howard did here, because he kept jumping back and forth through so many parts. Having conversations, they're already wailing. Yes, they're wailing because they know the king won't see another day. Why did your leaders take this long? Well, it takes time. And you had to make sure that the snake was in the house of the elephant. Remember that reference I made? And he actually conjures up an image of a snake and an elephant. That's pretty darned cool. You got to give that props, okay? That was actually pretty neat. I like that. I don't know if Robert E. Howard didn't write that, but I'll give it to you. Have a whole conversation with the priest of Ashura. Once again, if you really want to know more about those guys, read The House of the Dragon. Good story. And they talk about the fact that, everything needs to be burned, but he did give out a piece of his hair, and that piece of his hair was then swapped, and that's what we used. And it only took a lock of hair. That's all it takes, because every part of it, and that's how we're stealing his soul. And then there's the cutscene to the yell being the king who's coming back, and he's like, no. The priests and the people of the Black Circle have done this to me. They want to stick me into this body that they summoned from hell. You've got to help me here. You've never disobeyed me before. You need to kill me. I can't. You've never deceived me before. Obey my command and kill me. Pulls out the dagger and kills him. Oh no! And then we cut scene to the fact that she has now arrived at the fort, and you have Chunder Shan writing his note. The note is what you see here, which is giving the background information for the fact that he's captured the 7 individuals, and he's written to Conan for a ransom, and how he wants to parlay. And the Devi appears. Oh my goodness, who? Oh my goodness, it's you? What are you doing here? They have a whole conversation similar to what you saw in the Savage Sword about how they want to use Conan. He needs to come here because, although you've captured his men, I've checked everywhere. The people who killed the king, that was actually the Black Seers, and we need to get back to them. Seer, do you fear them? Who doesn't? Everybody fears them, but does Conan fear them? Well, I don't think there's anything that he actually fears. And that's why we need to get him here. We're going to use him. And then we cut scene to Guitar sitting here listening to the whole thing so that she is so much aware. And Chunder Shan saying, well, head off to bed. We'll spend the night and in the fortress, and then we'll have him come here tomorrow, and everything will be fine. And at this point in time, we cut scene to Conan breaking in, finding Chunder Shan when he comes back to his tables, and no, I'm Conan. Why haven't you taken my gold? What does it matter with you? Don't touch that knife. What do you want? There's a mission you need to perform. Very similar to what you saw in the Savage Sword. And then the Devi knocks and comes in. Devi? No. Haha, bonks him on the face, and hang my men now. Off he goes, takes off with him, and they, again, Chunder Shan is being very smart, does not mention this to Devi. There's been an abduction, we need to go get her back. And they ride off. Conan is riding off into the darkness. The Devi is cursing him out. She says, no. They are going to trade you because I want my 7 hillmen back for 1 princess. And as he rides off, he rides into a small crevice, And he does it. He hears the sound, and the horse is taken down, and he dives off with the Devi. Puts her down, and then we have a bunch of men attacking. And then we cut scene back to Katara, who's now gone back to the city by the fort, has been hauled up, and then sits down and says, "Oh, no. Where is Karam Shah? Already asleep. Oh yeah, great. Conan stolen the Devi. And carried her off into the hills." End. That's end of this particular issue. Pretty quick. It's amazing how much they've been jumping back and forth in this one. Like, I just did that in like 4 minutes, and it seems like I was going very quickly, but what was actually happening there was I was just keeping pace with the tale. This is written in a very fast way, and it's done in a way where they've actually cut down on a lot of information as well. Anyway, it's kind of neat, but yeah, let's go into issue number 2. All right, issue number 2. Pretty cool cover. All right, Conan finds himself fighting off a bunch of men, and they're like, "What, you flinch? Get in there and take them." And he's, "Your asshole's at you." And he's like, "Wait a minute, Conan." Now, Conan does kill only one of his men, although it does look like he was fighting a couple there at a time, which it's an imaging thing. Let's just call it that. He explains, "Listen, this is mine. I have a hostage. We need to get hiding." And they say, "Well, we got to get going." And then we cut scene back to Katara and Kemsha. And she's like, "Well, hold on. Where is Kemsha?" "Well, he's downstairs sleeping." "Okay, we need to use this for our advantage. We are going to, you and I, help ourselves. And we're going to carve out an empire ourselves." And he's like, no. I'm not one of the Black Circle. I only do the stuff I do at their command. He's like, well, do it on your own. Like, you love me, like I love you. We've already done the shtipping. We've already broken one of the rules. Once you've broken a little, you've broken a lot. Let's go. And he says, "Yeah, all right, let's go." Off he goes. In this, he seems less convinced than what you saw in Howard's work, as well as in the Savage Sword of Conan edition. And they leave, and Karam Shah gets up and he's like, "Whoa, hold on. I'm going to write a note here. Hey, send me a bunch of men." Exact same thing that we saw in the Savage Sword. I don't need to go into greater detail on that. We cut scene to now the point where in the Savage Sword we saw Kemsa go forward and actually kill all of the men that were in the fort. And it's pretty close. Like, he gets them to open the door. He orders him to actually spear himself. He does. The other guy attacks. This is not quite there, because it seems here like he just casts the thing and the guy just has a jugular blow and he dies. Not the same as Robert E. Howard intended. He blows open the door. There's a bunch of the guys thinking it's Conan. He throws forward 3 balls, and then everybody inside dies. And we're going to go to Afghanistan, and we'll be there before dawn. And the Devi wakes up in the stables, house, fort, whatever it is. And there's a whole conversation going on outside. And they get the story about, there's a ransom, and we're going to have a conversation about this because, the people when they came forward, they found that, the horse was dead. They assumed it was us. They sent forward men. They burnt a village. We burnt their village. And Yara asshole's like, "Okay, we need to have a conversation about this. That Karam Shah guy, he actually is just somebody we tolerate." And Conan's like, no. He actually is a spy for Tyrann, which is actually dialogue we saw in the Savage Sword. I just skipped over because it wasn't really that important. And this is where you see the point where Yara Assel's men are turning against him. There's a large argument going on outside. And the argument is all around, well, why are we doing all of this risk? And Conan does say, "I don't ask any man to fight my battles." And they do the thing here where it says, if you attack me, then there's 50 others who will then tear you apart. And this is where Yara Assel has the conversation and kicks him out to go and actually get information from an oncoming scout. It got a little off kilter there, but it came back. So I'm like, okay. He heads down there and he sees this guy, again, Kemsa. Kemsa casts a spell. This thing is on the ground. Take this one. Off you go. He takes it off and he puts it down in front of him. Yara Assel picks it up and dies. And then, here's the voice in the air, see? Your asshole is dead. Kill the Outlander, and they attack. And this is all happening where we see the spider now climbing away. It almost looks mechanical, like an android or something like that. I remember the name of the movie that we saw those mechanical spiders in. It was pretty damn horrifying. If I remember correctly, they were climbing on a construction elevator outside of a building. Was Tom Selleck in that movie? It doesn't matter. Anyways, Conan fights his way back into the actual stable room. There's one guy behind him who attacks. Conan then smashes him against the actual wall where the horse is. The horse kicks him. He dies. "I thought you were dead. Why would you care?" "Well, it's preferable you to those wolves." Pretty close. Pretty darn close. They take a battering ram and like, okay, we're going to get out of here. We're going to go through this secret door. Here's the doorway. It'll lead us out here. They come in, but they're already gone. Conan is riding off, but doesn't do what we thought he was going to do. He rides out, and these two are just hanging out. And Conan sees them, And she sees them, and they see them, but they just ride off. And the Devi says guitar, and these are like, how? How did that make sense? So Kamsha actually doesn't get trampled down in this. Well, that's kind of weird. And this is where you have the conversation that we saw before the battle in the Savage Sword. He's like, well, why did you do that? He's like, no, here, let me walk you through what's going to happen here. I don't need to do everything. It's just misplaced. It was in a different spot. And this is where the villagers suddenly come down upon them. Not them wounded, just them. What's going to happen in here? All right, into book number 3, we'll find out what the heck happened here. All right, shooby. We will, no, too far. Pages stuck together. Here we go. Wait a minute. Did you show him fighting a snake? I don't think he fights a snake in this. Yeah, we'll find out when we get inside. The scene opens up here where basically you get to the point where Conan was wandering through the hills and he came upon the local woman and said, no, I need your clothes. And they buy her clothes. Give me your clothes, I'll give you this money. And she just goes right with it. Get behind the rock, put these on. The Devi does so and comes out, and Conan is so impressed with how she now humanizes and looks normal, whereas before she went as a goddess and now she comes out as real, and he pats her on the butt. And Robert E. Howard wrote this in that she got this as a sign of affirmation, as a positive comment. But in this, don't you dare do that again. You were a goddess, I had to make sure you were real. Kind of a weird take on that. But listen, I understand where we're going with this. Not Robert E. Howard going with it, but I understand where we're going with it now. He throws the clothes away and explains, listen, we had to throw them away because we gave them back to her. She just didn't torture them. They would have come here for us anyways. And they ride along and they say, it's kind of interesting that, Guitarra was there. That was strange. And he's like, but nobody's going to run into us out here because, the mountain's over there. And she's like, are you afraid of them? Well, not really. And this is where they see the carpet thing, Yimsha's carpet. And as they turn a corner, suddenly, boom, Kemsha's there. And Kemsha throws a spell, and Conan's like, no, that's not going to work on me. And he attacks, and she blasts him back with like a lightning bolt type thing. And then he talks about how, he really got a sense of who he was and how powerful he was when he fought off that entire village. And you see him doing it here with this blast of fire. The blast of fire is actually very close to what Robert E. Howard wrote in. It didn't happen in this way and how it came to be here, but still works. Anyways, the Devi has a conversation with Guitar and says, no, I am with my love all the way. And you really don't matter to me at this point in time. And just as they're having this conversation, boom, in comes the 4 acolytes. And like, Master? And he's like, oh, no, I was not, I cannot, and I will not. And then there's a whole conversation where he's like, no, I'm not going to fall for this. But they move away from the hypnotism thing. And it looks like they're going for this fight of like fire. And they're like, no. His strength is actually in something else. And they blind the guitar. They shoot her in the eyes with lightning bolts and blind her. So she runs off the cliff because she's been blinded and she's in pain. And off she goes. And this is where, before he can even turn around and do anything, they crack the actual ground. He falls off with her. This wind burst comes, takes the Devi away, and Conan finds himself completely alone. They're just gone. There's no wind, there's no slashing in the wind. And he looks down and he's like, well, there's the Afghulis. And he's like, oh, I'll get them to help me. So he's yelling at them and the whole trader conversation happens. And this conversation is actually very close to what Robert Howard had intended. He's like, well, no, I didn't betray you. And they try to shoot him. And he's like, these guys are idiots. He actually does say idiots. And rides off in the other direction. And as he's riding along, he comes upon Kemsha. And Kemsha says, yeah, I'm going to kill them. Wait, I can't kill them. You're going to kill them. Kill them all. He's like, I'm going to. I'll have that Devi back if I have to tear down that mountain with my bare hands. The curse of Yuzohon. Here, take my girdle. And Conan's like, yeah. He's like, and then he gives him the actual information. Follow the golden vein. Break the crystal with the 4 crown-guards. Beware the master's transmutations. I'm going to Katara. And then he dies. And Conan puts it on and then ambushes Karam Shah and says, why are you here? They have the whole conversation like normal. He's like, well, I knew you were here because, this, and then I found that person. And Conan's like, yeah, but I knew you were actually a Turian. Anyways, listen, work with me here. We'll go and get her together because we both want her. And then we'll fight it out at the end. He's like, all right, fine, let's go. And off they go, and they find their way to the first peak where they leave the horses and they're climbing along. And then it's interesting because you really don't get a sense in the Robert E. Howard piece or in the Savage Sword that they were climbing bare cliffs or anything even close to it. They were just walking up the side of a hill or a mountain. But now in the dog attacks, it's literally jumping down off of a cliff. They hack it to bits, and this guy's not doing too good until finally the hawk attacks. They spear the hawk, and then the fireballs come down. And the fireballs is kind of an interesting one because this guy pokes it, and then it literally lifts him up, and then fries him in midair, and then drops him. That's gnarly. Anyways, more are coming, and they decide to shoot them with the bows and arrows, but that doesn't happen until a little bit later. Cut back to the Debbie waking up, and for some reason she doesn't have any clothes here. Anyways, there's the master, and they have the whole conversation where you were seeking me, weren't you? He's like, yeah, we are the Black Seers, you killed my brother. Whole conversation happens here where, yeah, there's a reason for that. I was working with the king, but you know, I've got my own things going on. And the dialogue is very close, and she grabs a dagger and dives in, ha! And there's the lotus which she drops. And he says, no, I'm gonna make you my slave because this is the new thing I wanna go with now because I'm bored. It's like, no, I'm going to make you yield. I'm going to lash you with all sorts of horrors, and he casts a spell. We're going a little off key here. We're seeing things go a little off kilter. In fact, a little off kilter in a lot of weird ways. Huh. All right, let's get into issue 4. Okay, issue 4, here we go. Bingo, bango, bongo. Ooh, there's those guys again. Man, they do not look good. In fact, they look bad. All right. The story starts off with the arrows and the kabooms and the kabangs. We knew that was coming. And as they head their way on up there's the guy with the horn who makes the ground rumble. And this guy falls off. That's not good. And suddenly there's a twang, and this guy suddenly falls. And he's like, nice shot, I know. And he steps out of the way with some lava falls. Again, not what we saw in the Robert Howard stories. He breaks the wall down and sees them running off. There's no rock falling here. And he sees them dive off of a cliff. And he's like, oh, there's weird air down there. I don't like wizards. Wait, follow the golden strand. But look, if they went down, I can go down. He remembers what Kemsha told him. At this point in time, the guy who's gone rabid with dog attacks and falls down. And you see him. It's almost like he's melting like, I don't know, like Raiders of the Lost Ark melting. Ooh, weird. Anyway, Conan says, screw it, I'm going, you guys can follow me. And they do follow him down, and as they get to the bottom of this thing, not going through a crevasse and coming back up, no, going down this weird spirally thing, that's when the acolytes attack, and they slaughter them, until it's just them and a couple men left. It's like, okay, leave a man here, we'll go in, and this, just like in the Savage Sword, ha ha ha, and he draws an arrow and he fires it off, but this time, his arrow turns into a snake before he even has a chance to fire it. And the snake bites, and Conan looks back and doesn't see him fighting with a snake. No, doesn't see him with an arrow in his arm, but sees him fighting with a snake, which is moving away from what the Robert E. Howard intent was. It's becoming more physical now and less about the hypnotism. He does know there's crystal there, and they say, well, we can't go back, so only way out is in. Off they go, and they see that. That does not look like a table with 4 small snakes on it, although I do see pomegranates in that crystal. Anyways, as they turn around, this is where the 4 guys appear, and suddenly they're frozen. Now, this is an interesting point. You did not see this in the Savage Sword, where Conan tries to stop the one man, and the man just pushes him aside and just keeps going. It does happen here, though. And he pushes him aside with a smack in this, which is a little more than what Robert E. Howard did, but they did pick up on a nice part there that Savage Sword missed. All 4 of them wander up, and all 4 of them just get beheaded. Conan loses it, grabs onto the girdle, and then attacks. And as he's attacking, the snakes come to life, but he goes to attack the crystal right away. He's not wasting any time running after these guys right off the bat. Again, quite different. And these are giant-ass snakes. And when they attack, he doesn't seem to be beheading them as much as he is just focusing on breaking that crystal. And when he does, these guys just go down. The master then appears and says, yeah, Karam Shah, I know you. You think you work against me? No. I'm going to take your heart. And he rips it out. And Conan loses it and says, nope, I'm not happy with this. Runs up, not holding onto the girdle anymore. Not fighting off any sort of waves of magic. Just runs up and swoosh, there's nothing there. And then for some reason, with this swoosh, and we're supposed to follow this now, he cuts through air. There's no sense of something small and wispy flying away or any of the fear that this master of Yimsha is supposed to be actually exerting. And then suddenly he's in the room where Yasmina is with a giant snake. And that's weird, because there's no snake with a stabby thing through it, but he does stab it through the mouth and then grabs his very own sword back from stabbing in the mouth and then slashes at it again, yelling, die, die. It does run off. It does turn into human bloody footprints. He picks up the Debbie. Kissy, kissy, smoochy, smoochy, Rico Suave, the Hyborian Age, we've discussed it enough times. They head on out, and as they're heading out, Dark Horse thought enough, to bring in this whole conversation piece that Howard had between the Devi and Conan about, well, what are you going to gain? Why would I stay here? Why would you go with me? Why would I go with you? Again, trying to create that stronger female character. And as they're doing this, suddenly, what the devil? And they hear the attack and they hear the battle going on below. And as they're talking, she's like, well, you're not going to actually seriously just keep me and let your men die, but at the same time, you can't ride down there and save your men and leave me up here to die. Crom knows what I can do. Because again, he doesn't know. And this is where she sees her own men and says, okay, listen, you go down there and help him on this side. I'm going to go down on my side. We'll meet him in the middle, and then everything will be fine. That's a great plan. And eagle talons, or sorry, vulture talons, and the attack, the slice, and then it turns and falls and turns back into the master as it falls. And he says, okay, that's fine. You'll be Devi again. And that's pretty much where the whole thing ends. They ride off. She goes down to meet her folks. Conan goes down to meet his folks. And that's how we end the story. Well, that was weird.
All right, let's wrap this bad boy up and let's finish this Battle Royale off. We have to come up with the conclusion of Battle Royale number 8, which we started all those years ago when we made this video. Now, this is kind of like 8B, and we're going to call it 8B just to make me feel better about the numbering. Yeah, we're going to go there. So here's what we had today. We had People of the Black Circle. We walked through the Robert E. Howard story and actually gave you the details on what happened there, which we didn't do back in that Battle 8. We also went through the complete Savage Sword of Conan adaptation of that, which was the winner of Battle Royale number 8, where it faced off against the Ablaze version. In that one, there were some fairly major differences in the storyline. But what do we really see here between Savage Sword and the Dark Horse version? Well, the Savage Sword version, when we went through it page by page, there were a few small nuances, but they were very, very small. So, for example, when Devi Yasmina woke up and the local hill woman was making meat on the grill and Conan came in, there was a clear inference that the two of them had been stooping the night before. That didn't happen in the Robert E. Howard story. Now, granted, there was a playful kick in the Robert E. Howard story, but that doesn't infer that. So that's kind of weird. The other thing that was kind of odd was the whole issue with when Kimsa, that's his name, Kimsa, is ridden down. Ridden down? Rode down? No, is trampled. We're going to go with that word. Is trampled by Conan when he's riding out of the Wazari village. And we leave the story there. It's only later when Conan is talking to Karim Shah that he actually finds out the details of what happened there. After he trampled down Kemsha, I guess, somehow got himself back up. I don't know. Anyway, and then blasted the village with the kind of fire that literally just scorched people, like left ashes in their wake. Now, the Savage Sword version had a dragon up here, and that dragon was then blasting fire, I gather. So that was slightly... I don't understand why we went through the medium of a dragon there, but, listen, Marvel wanted to do it, but still, the story is very, very, very close to what Robert E. Howard wrote. And that's typical for when Roy Thomas touches one of these Robert E. Howard stories. Now, let's talk about the Dark Horse version of that. Well, the Dark Horse version was fairly true to the Robert E. Howard story, and Dark Horse does typically do a good job of staying fairly true to the Robert E. Howard story. But they did it in some really strange ways. There were chapters that were moved around, and we noticed this when we were going through the books themselves. I decided to just discuss it then instead of nailing it now, because going back now would just be silly. But that was an odd thing. The other odd thing that came out of this was, for some reason, the magic was changed from what Robert E. Howard wrote, which was based on hypnotism and that whole Mentalk thing. That wasn't the thing. Like, for some reason, when Kemsha was fighting off against the people of the Black Circle, the four of them, there was lightning flying around. They fried Gitara's eyes to blind her instead of mind controlling her to walk off the cliff. And you really saw it when the Master in the Robert E. Howard story had the arrow thrown at him. He caught it, tossed it back, and when that arrow did kill that individual, in the Robert E. Howard story, when everybody else looked back, they saw an arrow. But in this one, when Conan looked back, he saw a snake. That's not an arrow. It was something different, and it really did speak to the fact that you were walking away from that hypnotism being the base of the magic. The actual wrap-up of the story, though, I think was the biggest departure for me. The fact that the Vulture came in before Conan and Devi Yasmina broke off to go to their various points where they were then going to come back and meet in the middle ground. That was weird, and you didn't really get a sense as to whether that was happening or not. There was a discussion of it, but then that's it. Like the Vulture, and then, okay, well, you say 350 of my men. Well, how do we know it's 350? Like the battle hasn't happened. Did I miss something? I don't think I did. It's almost like pages were cut and they just weren't put in the final version, and that seems odd to me. Other smaller things, like when you're really dealing with the fact that the 4 individuals when they got in the castle went up en masse, that was kind of odd. But Dark Horse did do some other things that Marvel completely missed. The visual of the 4 heads on spikes outside of the king's castle, that's really telling. That was a pretty cool one. When Conan tried to stop the first tribe's person, or so the Uranistanian, yeah, I'm going to go with that, from walking forward when he was being summoned by the 4 acolytes. That was a thing. But when you have the other larger departures, like you're not following a golden thread, what you're following is a large golden downward spiral path. That it just went in a different direction. I'm not saying it was bad, but the point of these Battle Royales is which one's closer. Well, I think it's fairly obvious with just the number of points we've hit here. The one that's actually closest here is actually the Savage Sword of Conan, which is the oldest adaptation of this particular story. So I'm going to give it to them. So conclusion time, yeah, that's it. Savage Sword of Conan wins this Battle Royale. And Savage Sword of Conan, after winning the first round of this, has now won the second, and is the one that's going to be in the final video where we list off this is the most accurate comic adaptation of a Robert E. Howard story of People of the Black Circle. Well, everybody, that's our video for this week. Yeah, this was an interesting one. It was fun to go through it. I always find it interesting to be able to sit down and actually say, or stand in front of the library and have the conversation about which one's the closer one, because that's where we really just hash out the facts to say, well, this, that, then, and then that's the bottom line. So it's always fun when I'm sitting here doing these to actually hit that. The other thing that was fun about today was, well, today got away from me. A lot of things came up today in the shooting of this video. A lot of things happened in between, which is why I've got a little bit of a sunburn now on the top of the ears. Yeah, I don't do sun well. Anyways, that's our video for this week, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one. Working in the coal mine, going down. Working in the coal mine. Whoop, I'm gonna step down. In this case, though, I'm going to sit down. Welcome back to the end of the video. If you've gotten yourself here, well, it's for one of two reasons. One is you lost your patience listening to me ramble way back there in the video. And it was probably way back there in the video. And then you just took your little mouse, if you're on a computer, and you dragged on out to the end and said, when the hell is this guy going to get to the point? Well, no, you missed it. The point's back there. You know, where I added chapters. You should be using the chapters and go back there and get to the point. This part's not for you. This part, if you got here through the natural attrition of being one of the Tennessee Facts loyals that watches these videos and know we get Easter eggs, you sat through the, I don't know how many minutes of black screen that you probably had to go through to get here. But you're here now. And the reason why we're here now is because, well, time has passed since we shot the video. As you can clearly tell, a little bit of the sunburn has come off my ears. More beard has grown in because, well, I don't... Stop being critical of my beard, okay? The bottom line is time has gone by. And I was editing, and I got up to minute 82. Yeah, it was 82. And that's where I stopped it. And I said, okay, we're done there. And I said, let's do something a little different. Not for this channel, but as far as YouTube goes, I imagine most YouTube creators, when they see a video and it's 80 some odd minutes, they're probably saying to themselves, ooh, this is bad. Trim it right back because, you know, the algorithm is not going to like this because, you know, you got to shorten videos, user views, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Listen, I said, no, we're already at 82 minutes. Why not just add more? Because I haven't done one of these Easter egg things in a while, so that's what we're doing here. So let's walk through and answer some of the questions I've been getting, which is, well, what am I reading right now? And maybe some of the things about what's coming up on the channel later. Yes, let's go with that. Okay, so a couple things I'm reading. One that I'm halfway through right now is from a viewer of this channel, actually, who is working on a story, who shall remain nameless. Shall remain nameless herein. I'm not spoiling anything. I'm not letting the cat out of the bag. Who has written, as far as I can tell so far, a fantastic sort of cyberpunk, steampunkish type adventure. There's guns and clubs, and it's really good so far. And I'm going through that, but I'm doing this, and again, this has not seen publication yet. It's just, hey, Tennessee Facts, I absolutely would, and I am thoroughly enjoying that. It's taking some time, but, you know, it's pretty cool. The next thing I'm reading, though, which I'm reading at the same time, though, because I do read before I go to bed every night. And the reason why I do that is because, well, you should take your eyes off of screens before you go to sleep. You get better. I don't know how many of you know that. Like, screens, they're not so good. Also why I go with an analog watch most of the time, because, you know, some screens, man, not so good. Anyway, a while back, we shot some videos on the Wold-Newton universe. And there was a series of books within that we talked about, which are the Haydon of Opar ones. Time's Last Gift was where we ended that one off. And in that, I stupidly read from the end of the series backwards because I was too dumb to realize what I was reading and go and pick them up and buy and read them in order. And we shot videos for those. I'll put links in the video description down below if you want to watch those. Really had a good time reading those. And honestly, it was one of those, I'm like, I didn't even know this was a thing. I'm so glad that I've discovered it is in fact a thing, and yes, I'll be reading more of those going forward. But one of the things I said in the last video I shot, the video that has a thumbnail looks like this. I'm going to lean back so we can get the... Okay, that's enough. Okay, when I shot that one, I said I'm really excited because not only did I find out about the Wold-Newton universe that... Oh my God, I get his name backwards every time. Philippe Jose Farmer. There. Not only did I discover that universe, but he also made another one called The World or the Universe of Tears. Not tears as in, look, I'm crying. No, tears as in, you know, this tier, that tier, the tier below that. Almost like a class system or a caste system, but not because it's actual tiers. Well, I did get one book out of that, and I found it when I was out and about. And it looks like this. And honestly, I'm about 3/4 of the way through it right now. And I'll tell you, it's not as engaging as the Wold-Newton one. I don't know why. I think one of the reasons why is probably because I don't know enough about this world or universe of tears thing that the setting is within. Because really, this book is a story of a secondary character getting his own little adventure in this, because I guess he was a fan favorite from books 1 and 2. And once again, yes, I know I'm reading them out of order. That's because I'm stupid, and apparently I'm too dumb to just say to myself, hey, if you're going to do this, just start from the beginning. Buy the books right the first time. I don't know what to tell you. I can't fix the way this stupid old man brain works. So we're going to finish that one. I'm probably not going to do a video on that one, although I might stick another Easter egg in at the end of one of these. It depends how much I really enjoy this World of Tears thing when I get to the... No. We might actually do a booktuber video on that. Maybe, who knows. After we're done that one, and I'm going to get into this one. This is one I'm actually particularly excited about, and I finally got a copy of it, and it looks like this. And in fact, I've got it sitting right here. See? Right there. Yeah, Tarzan Alive. Kind of tied into the Wold Newton universe. But not. But it is. But it's not. But it's not. If you read the essay of the 3 Tarzans, but we'll talk through that when I'm done that. We will definitely do a booktuber review video on that particular book when we're done it, because I am, well, for a variety of reasons, I'm particularly excited about it. Just leave it at that. Now, after that, we will be doing, or somewhere around there, we're just sprinkling here as we go. Sprinkling as far as timelines go. We're going to be doing a couple unboxings because we've got some Kickstarter and things that I've backed that have come into the house. And we've got to go through those. One is the Dracula and Frankenstein slipcase editions that we picked up. 2 will be the Kickstarter for the heavy metal, the Angry Mob thing that I'm now a part of, when that comes in. It's been shipped, but it had no status update for 2 days. That can't be good, but I'm assuming it will eventually get here. That will come in. And then finally, we're going to have to find some way to introduce you guys who don't know well, I'm not going to oversell this. To introduce you to Richard Corbin. Now, I don't know how many of you know the name Richard Corbin, have been exposed to Richard Corbin, have seen the work of Richard Corbin. Unfortunately, we lost Richard Corbin recently. Not recently, actually. I think it was, well, we'll talk more about that later. He's no longer with us, which is a shame because he was a visionary creator in the space that really fills in the eerie and the creepy magazines, but also the heavy metal stories. He had some great ideas and some wonderful things that came out. Now, the problem with, well, it's a problem and an opportunity, really, depending on how you look at it. A lot of Richard Corbin stuff, which was beautifully drawn and beautifully rendered, has a lot of naked in it. So you see, the issue here being the YouTube not a big fan of the naked. It makes it difficult for us to pick material that's going to necessarily be shown to you. I'll tell you, one of the things I was really excited about was this hardcover book over here. I picked this one up, and there's a whole series of these, and I only discovered the Den character because I was reading it in a heavy metal magazine a while back. And it was a snippet, a small vignette of a story. And I was like, oh, now in there was some naked, and I thought, well, let's just be for this one book and whatever. We'll move on. I can't picture. Well, needless to say, I picked this hardcover up, thumbed through it, and yes, there's so much naked in there. This Dan story, I'm sure, is going to be very exciting because I did enjoy the one piece that I read in the magazine. Having it collected is very nice for me, but I'm not going to be able to share that with you. But I did see an ad the other day that Heavy Metal has collected another Richard Corbin stories, a series, and I can't remember the name of it. But I remember when I was seeing the ad and looking through that, I was thinking, well, that doesn't have a lot of naked in it, and maybe we should read that one. I think we might use that piece as an anchor, and then we'll do a video actually talking about Richard Corbin and the stuff that I've read of him to make sure that I can introduce those of you who don't know Richard Corbin to his work and maybe whet your appetite. If you're interested, you can go down that rabbit hole and find out more yourself. But anyways, there you go, everybody. That's the Easter egg. It's not a very exciting one, but it gives those of you who are interested a sense of where we're at and what we're doing next. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. Anyways, everybody, we'll see you in the next video.